Hey there. Welcome to another episode of The Power of Spiritology. Today we're going to talk a little bit about visualization. And I think you're going to enjoy this talk. And I'm going to start off with a reading from the Bible in the book of Genesis, Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. God said, "Let us, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, make mankind in our image after our likeness, and let them have complete authority over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, the tame beasts, and over all of the earth, and over everything that creeps upon the earth." And again, that was the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 26. And it's kind of interesting because God said, "Let us make man or mankind." Oh, by the way, that particular version was the Amplified Bible. Uh, but anyway, God said, "Let us make man in our image." So I just had a thought about that particular verse. I know later on the Bible goes on to say that God formed Adam from the dust of the earth, and that gives you like an impression that Adam was made like with physical hands and whatnot. Um, I don't know, like putting particles of dust together. It gives you an interesting picture. But if you go back to that verse, "Let us make man in our image and after our likeness." What if that actually means that God visualized us into existence? I thought about that because we always talk about the law of attraction. We talk about the power of our minds to visualize and create and shape our realities. And there are some people that even think that if you visualize hard enough, strong enough, should I say, not hard enough, but strong enough, then you can materialize things out of thin air. And considering some of the things that I've seen, I mean, I think that that's totally possible. After all, it says later on in the four Gospels how the Messiah materialized things. He multiplied the fish and the loaves, and he brought money forth from the mouth of a fish. He did all kinds of materializations out of thin air. So what if that's that book, I mean, that verse, Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, what if that's the very first instance of visualization? To make man in his image, the image being inside his mind's eye, and after our likeness, um, to imagine man to be like him or them, since it does say let us make man as opposed to let me make man. But could that possibly be like one of the very first cases of visualization? And when I think about visualization, I think about so many things that happened to me in my own life that I actually thought about, that actually happened, or I actually thought about, saw it in my mind's eye, and it actually came to me. Like even this house that I live in, I actually visualized this house, and through a series of circumstances over the course of probably about 2.5 months, this house came to me. I remember one instance. I was helping a friend of mine, and she had read one of my books, my first book actually, called The Power of Spiritology. And I'll talk about that briefly momentarily. But she had read the book. And so we were hanging out talking about visualization. And so she told me that she wasn't able to visualize. So I sat her down and we talked for a little bit. And I asked her to close her eyes and just wait for an image to appear. And she did it. And after a few moments, nothing came to her. And I asked her, what do you see? And she said, all I can see is darkness, blackness. Because I told her, just close your eyes, pretend like the back of your eyelids is like a screen, and just watch it and see what your mind conjures up. She said nothing. So I told her to keep her eyes closed, and I told her to, well, let's start with some basics. Try to visualize some colors. And so I told her to visualize the color blue, and then I told her to visualize the color red. And then I asked her, were you able to see these colors? And she said no. All she could see was the darkness. And that got made me a little troubled in the sense that I'm like, I don't understand. I mean, to the best of my knowledge, we've all been equipped with the ability to visualize. And then after that incident, I started dealing with other people. And I'll get back to her in a minute. But I started dealing with other people. And I have run into several people that say they can't visualize. And I was like, I don't see how that's possible. I understand that some people say that they're visual creatures, or they work more by feeling or what have you. They learn by hearing, that kind of thing. But I mean, visualization is so basic uh, to spirituality. So I wondered about that. So after a few conversations with the girl that I was trying to help visualize some things and help her do some visualization exercises, um, we talked about some things that happened in her personal life, particularly when she was younger, like as a child, and she had all this bad stuff that happened to her as a kid, and she had all these troubles and problems with her family that stem from way back when she was a child, even into her adulthood. Even at the time that we were talking about, or we were doing a visualization exercises, she was still kind of at arms with her family and her mom. And she talked about some abuse going on and that kind of thing. So we were talking about it, and she was telling me about some things that happened in her past. And she's real passionate about it, and she was visibly upset. And then it dawned on me, and I asked her. It dawned on me, and I said, "You can see that stuff in your mind, can't you, as it happened in the past?" And she said, "Yeah." So I'm like, "So you can visualize. You can visualize. If you can see all those past hurtful moments in your mind so vividly, then you can visualize. If you can feel those moments, see them, you can hear these voices in your head of all this bad stuff that happened. Yeah, your visualization power does work. The problem is all the trauma. The trauma is what was wrecking her ability to visualize for better things in her life. And what's interesting, trauma gets attached. You got all these memories attached to hurtful emotion. And hurtful emotion, pain and suffering, anger, those are low density type energies, low density. And you got these memories attached to these low density type energies. And it equates to spiritual weight, and it weighs your spirit down. So when you try to visualize for greater things, and you need energy from a higher level, a more rarefied level, then you're going to have some problems, because these memories that are caught up in these hurtful emotions and mesh with your spirit, stagnate your spirit, and it impedes the ability to visualize successfully, consistently. So that was her issue. And I thought about it, and, even in my own experience, that has been my issue too, once upon a time. And if you think about it, like whoever you are listening, have you ever tried to visualize like on a consistent basis? I mean, God made us in his image and after his likeness. So that means we should be able to successfully visualize without any problems. And then another thing came to mind. The mind itself, it has to be clear. It has to be clear. Like, you got all these ideas out there about visualization, the power of attraction, the law of attraction, the law of reciprocation, and it's all true. But what good does that do us if we're vibrating at a lower frequency because we haven't released trauma? This trauma is meshed with our spirits and weighing it down and hampering its ability to visualize a greater and better life for ourselves. You have so many systems that promote the power of visualization. And it's true. It's true. Visualization works. It works like magic. And the reason why it works is because the same way that trauma that's weighing your spirit down, that trauma is real to you, your spirit envisions things. It comes up with an idea. Let's say you have an idea, you want a car. So you come up with an idea. You might not have any money or anything like that, but you know you want a car. Or like in my case, I wanted a house some 10 years ago when I bought this house. You visualize, you get the idea, and then by believing that it will come true, you infuse spiritual energy in that idea. You infuse consciousness in that idea. And once the consciousness gets into that idea, it merges and it becomes a seed. Some people say thought form. And it starts to materialize. It gets planted in the kingdom of God. The kingdom being the ethers, for lack of a better way to put it. But that's just a briefing on how it works. I'll do a talk later on to give a little bit more detail about how visualization works. But if trauma is holding you back, or negativity, negative thoughts, if that's holding you back, you have to nip that stuff in the bud. Again, you got these different ideas about visualization. And a lot of it is kind of like sensationalism. And the reason why I say that is because they don't tell you first things first. Like some of these books that I've read and some of these seminars that I've listened to or been to, They put the cart before the horse. They tell you to go out there, visualize, visualize, and make things happen. They tell you that the tail wags the dog. Doesn't work like that. So you go out and try it, and it's flighty at best. Interesting how reality can rain on our parades, huh? First things first, you got to understand if any type of trauma is weighing you down. You have to realize that trauma has to be released to a significant degree before your spirit is light enough to employ those visualization faculties. Most people that I know, and I've been in this boat myself, they've gotten the idea from these sensationalists that talk about visualization. Visualize, 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 make things happen. And after that, they tell you that you got to go out there and work, hustle and flow, grind. And I'm not saying that you got to completely remain physically stagnant, but it shouldn't be that hard. Think about it. I mean, if you are familiar with the Bible, when Moses went back to Egypt to rescue the Hebrews and deliver them out of the hands of bondage and take them to the promised land, they came upon the Red Sea. And by that time, the Pharaoh, he was pretty teed off, wasn't he? So the Pharaoh was like, oh, you know what? We're going to go get these people. We're going to do something. We're going to do something to them, or we either going to take them back as slaves. But he had second thoughts after he let him go. He was probably, thinking about it. I'm the Pharaoh. I'm the king. You can't do me like that. And he had probably became very bitter and resentful to Moses, or yeah, toward Moses, because Moses one upped him on all of his tricks with the staff and the serpents and the plagues and whatnot. Moses beat him at his own game. So I suspect he didn't like that. So he's like, okay, you know what? We're going to go and we're going to do something to these people. So here come the Egyptians barreling down on the Hebrew people. They're at the edge of the Red Sea. Everybody's panicking. They're in an uproar. Oh shoot, we're done for. And Moses stood on a high place, as best as I can remember how the story goes. And he said, the Egyptians that you see, you'll see no more. He said, stand still and behold the salvation of the Lord. And what happened after that? The sea parted. The Hebrew people, the Israelites, they went through on dry ground on the Red Sea. And when they came to the other side, the sea fell upon the Egyptians. End of story. Their troubles and their problems were over. I mean, later on, they went to create more problems, but that's another story in and of itself. But all they had to do was stand still and behold. And that's all you have to do. You have to stand still and behold the salvation of the Lord. You have to still your mind. Like the Egyptians that barreled down on the Hebrew people, that represented trauma, their oppressors. The Egyptians weighed them down. They let loose and they were headed toward the promised land. But guess what? The Egyptians tried to come back. Just like when you try to let go your mental troubles, don't they always try to come back? You have to be still your mind. And I also found out one of the issues with that is that people are addicted to noise. They want noise. I've been around people that are like, oh man, it's too quiet. Like I've ridden in cars with people. It's too quiet. Cut on the radio, blast the radio. It's like, and now you got all this stuff echoing in your mind. Your mind can't be quiet. It can't be still. All the noise in your mind contributes to what's called neurosis. So your mind is like neurosis basically is the mind vibrating at a very low frequency anyway. And your nerves are high strung, you got anxiety and just all this stuff going on. Low vibrations. But if you be still, you start to vibrate higher. So you have to understand how to be still, how not to revisit the arguments you had with whoever, your spouse or your significant other or that idiot at the job, and how not to revisit that. You got to figure out how to separate yourself from the Egyptians. The Egyptians are pursuing you, and you're thinking, oh, I got to dive into the water, the Red Sea, and try to swim away. I got to. No, you got to stand still and behold. Behold, look, to see, to visualize. So, with all that being said, this is the book I was telling you about earlier, my book, The Power of Spiritology. Let's see, I got it. By Dario Thomas. And if you want to understand how to be still, how to stand still and behold the salvation of the Lord, so you can employ your mind to work for you as opposed to against you, the book, The Power of Spiritology, can help you with that. It's on sale at Amazon.com, AmazonBooks.com, and it can help you out. Behold, stand still and behold the salvation of the Lord. The Egyptians that pursue you, you will see no more. Thank you again for listening. Uh, Subscribe to the Spiritology Television Network, and God bless.